And I came here in 1986 to run it for myself, and I signed the papers, and I was owner of the Red Barn Incorporated. People come in here for the experience, more so than I think anything else. And they love the fact that somebody's actually taking the time to listen. Maybe you learn in proportion to how much you listen and care. If you can find that balance between doing what you love that isn't really work, that might pay the bills, and can resonate with people, and actually to some extent help people. Without my customers, I would be doing what I don't love, guaranteed.
Seeing none, we'll move on to our fourth order of business, reports from staff and committees, our town manager report.
I don't have a specific town manager's report for you this evening, because anything I would report to you, we are going to be discussing as we work through this agenda.
Very good.
Just so you know, you missed that whole portion of the meeting, the whole front portion of the meeting. You weren't live at all for the first couple minutes.
Thank you.
Well then,
I'm going to read you our public announcements at least.
yes, I will redo our public announcements for those at home. First public announcement is nomination papers will be available on Monday, August 14th and due on September 22nd for the November municipal election. There will be 1 seat for the town council, 2 seats for the school board, and 1 seat for the Kennebec Water District. Our second public announcement is Senior Citizen Appreciation Day will be held on Friday, August 18th. Tickets are available at the town office from July 10th through August 14th. The event is free for Fairfield seniors. Non-resident and non-senior tickets are available for $6. And we had no public hearings. And no manager's reports, so let's move on to our fifth order of business. To waive the reading of and accept the minutes as printed for meeting number 14-17 held on July 12th, 2017.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Motion carries. Our sixth order of business is budget report and treasurer's warrant. Budget report, we have none. To approve the treasurer's warrant T1 in the amount of $4,000 for Lynch Landscaping, perpetual care, I believe, at the cemeteries.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Motion carries. Our seventh order of business is to take action on the following items of business. Order that the town council hereby requests the town manager to write a letter of support regarding the use of the discontinued railroad corridor from Oakland to North Anson for recreational purposes.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on this?
So it had come to my attention a couple of weeks ago that the local trail system is looking to acquire that property and turn it into a multi-use trail. And I'd actually asked the members of the club to come answer any questions we may have in regards to this. The reason that they would be looking for our letter is because part of that rail trail currently goes through the town of Fairfield out near Market Stream. So.
Out through the Market Stream area. Okay. And this is going to be ATV, or is this walking, or is this?
Should I make some comments?
Yes, please come up to the podium.
Hi, my name is Bill Baker, the Central Maine ATV Club. How are you folks tonight?
Good, thank you.
At our last meeting, we were approached by Brian Bronson with the Department of Conservation. Pan Am Railways is looking to abandon their rail system. It does take quite a bit of process for the rail system to go through the government and to get approval to officially abandon the railroad. The Department of Conservation is looking at acquiring this trail from Oakland to North Anson, similar to the Sunrise Trail, if anybody's familiar with that in Ellsworth.
Yep.
It's a multi-use trail, which is ATVs, snowmobiles, hiking, horseback riding, bicycling. So it's gonna be a really nice trail system. What he asked us to do is to go to the town and the local businesses and ask for letters of support and submit them to the Department of Conservation so that he can submit them to, on a state level, so that they can observe this and see if it's gonna be something that they're looking to pursue down the road. The initial cost that he was thinking, which would be coming out of grant money, would be $800,000 to $1 million to buy this section of trail, and then another $1 million or so to fix it. But I think it would be beneficial to people in this town and other towns to access this trail system if everything goes through
Would
with
it-
Pan
The timeline on that would
Am. They're
be,
looking to have the letter of support, what was the date, August?
Yeah, middle of August.
By the middle of August.
okay.
And we've had other letters of support that we could see that, from other towns of what they've written.
And they would be proceeding with this project how far in the future?
Well, they're waiting to see if Pan Am is going to officially abandon the rail, which they say that it's looking good that they're going to do it, and then it's a process to get
So
it.
we're talking a year,
It's
2
going to
years,
be
3
probably
years?
a couple of years, yes.
Couple of years down the
before
road,
it
okay.
Actually, the ball starts rolling. But we're asking the towns and businesses to, anything affiliated with this, to write some letters of support so that when they do review, the state reviews this, that this would be a good, positive thing for them to do. I think it would be.
Anyone else have any other questions, or?
I have one question. You're just looking for a letter of support for the premise and not a financial letter? of
Not at
support.
all. This is, exactly, yeah.
Just
This will be
wanted to clarify.
addressed to the Department of Conservation.
Yes.
We're
To the
not-
Department of Conservation?
Yes.
Okay.
I just want to correct Jeff, it's not our club that's looking to do it, it's
So
on
you guys
state
are
level.
helping to get the
Yes.
pieces? So
And they
this has
approached us.
been a conversation that's being had for at least 2 years now. Folks have been working on this to try to push it forward. So the fact that the Department of Conservation are requesting letter of support means that it is actually moving
Yes.
forward. So that's
Yes.
good.
So it's very exciting, and I'm glad to be here to ask you guys for support.
Is this in the addition to the trail that's out, that crosses into the Green Road and goes down through as well?
Well, it
Or
would
is that
be,
part of it?
kind of. You would have access to our trail off this trail system by the
So it's
Van
in
Mountain Road.
addition to that?
Yes,
then?
yes. This essentially would be an artery, a main artery coming in from everywhere in the state. If this gets through, then you essentially have access to trails statewide.
What they do is they go in and they'll actually remove the railroad tracks that are there now. They'll come out and they'll turn that all into trail surface. So because it already has existing bridges and those pieces makes it very beneficial and they're very wide, so it allows for lots of different
But
sources of
that's also why it's so
transportation.
costly.
And I believe it links to the Kennebec Trail system. It's Kennebec something trail,
No, they're looking to put a trailhead in Oakland.
right? And then in
Yeah.
North Anson, there's a trail that picks up, I think
Yeah,
it's already
it will
there.
cut through Oakland's trail system. Well, you can access it from there, or you can access it through our trail system, Norwich Walks, Club's
Mhm.
Trail. So there'll all be little branches off this
Oh,
main
okay.
artery that's going to be coming through.
But that piece that you're talking about up in North Anson, it would just basically be a straight shot all the way through to continue west.
To continue on to it,
Yeah.
yeah.
We have a large section of
It
trail,
ends there.
a road access on the Martin Stream Road. If we had that trail, that road access would be eliminated, because we'd be on the rail.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Any other comments, concerns? All those in favor? All those opposed?
Abstain from that.
One abstain. Okay. Item 17-68, order the town council hereby votes and authorizes the town manager to cast the MMA ballot for officers and executive committee members.
So moved.
Second.
Any questions, comments? Concerns? None? All those in favor? Motion carries. Item 1769, order that the town council hereby appropriates up to the sum of $250,000 to be taken from the undesignated fund balance to reduce the amount to be raised from taxation for the 2017-2018 fiscal year as per the annual town meeting warrant article 32 and discuss, comma, 2017-2018 school funding allocation with MSAD 49 board members.
So move for purpose
Second.
of discussion.
I'm going to move that we divide the question and start with discussion as a separate action item from approving expenditure of fund balance.
Well, the approval is just for discussion purposes anyway.
I heard a motion by Tony and a second by Boss.
Yes.
We have a motion and a second for discussion.
Yes, second for discussion.
Okay.
I think it would make sense to start with discussing, having the discussion with the school board officials who are present. I think that's an important part of deciding what we need to do about this, the expenditure from the undesignated fund balance. I mean, obviously, until we know what all of the expenses are, we can't know what we need to offset.
Absolutely.
Well, let me start by handing these around. I think I'm a couple short, but I'll give you those to start with so that you have the information that I'm looking at and so that you can, again, I'm Shelley Rudnicki. I'm chairman of the school board, as well as I'm on the finance committee for the school board. There are two other Fairfield board members, two other Fairfield residents that are school board members here as well, that represent the town of Fairfield. As well as they're both on the finance committee. The finance committee met a week ago to have a discussion. There is no firm decision made yet because of the full board needs to make a decision. But I wanted to kind of give you a highlight of what the finance committee is going to recommend. But I want to give you a little bit of a background so that you are aware. As you know, that the state allocated additional resources that were not planned for when we did our budget. However, when we did our budget, one of the things that Drummond Woodsum, which is the attorneys for the school board, came forth with was the recommendation that we actually put a warrant in our budget that states, and if you look at Article 18 of the warrants that I handed you, it basically states that in event that MS 8049 receives more state education subsidy than the amount included in the budget, shall the school board be authorized to use all or part of the additional state subsidies to increase expenditures for school purposes in cost center categories approved by the school board, increase allocation finances and reserve funds approved by the school board, and or decrease local share expectations as defined in Title 20-A, Section 15671-A1B for local property taxpayers for funding public education as approved by the school board. So basically what that says is that it's up to the school board what we do with additional allocation. Now, if you look at the other handout that I gave you, it's it's guidance upon the usage of the additional state funds for the 2017-2018 budget. And this came from the Maine Department of Education. And if you follow it down to scenario 2, the school administrative unit has passed a budget through all applicable stages. The budget did include a warrant article providing the school board with the authority to use the additional state funds received. Under this scenario, Section JJJJJ-5 applies, and the school administrative unit may utilize the increased subsidies as permitted under the approved article. So basically, again, what that says is it's up to the school board what we do with that money. Now, we did meet and discuss in a finance committee meeting last week, and it is, the finance committee is going to recommend to the full board that we do use 50% to offset the, to offset our school budget. And the reason we thought that is because we want to go by what the governor and the legislature, what they were looking to do with the additional money. So the school board has or the finance committee, because the board has not met yet, the finance committee would like to request from the town of Fairfield assurances from you folks that the money that we give to the town of Fairfield to offset the differences, because it comes from the school board, that money is actually used to, as an impact on the mill rate, that it actually helps affect the mill rate. And based on calculations from our business office, what that will actually do to help the mill rate for the town of Fairfield, it runs up, this is approximate, I don't have the exact numbers, but approximately it's about $170,000 back to the town of Fairfield. And what that would do to the mill for the state, for the town of Fairfield from the school budget would actually make our budget come to a negative 0.09 effect on the mill rate from the town, from the school. So to affect the school, it's a point, almost a 0.45 on the mill rate is that amount of money affects. But what it does, if you take what the increase in the school budget would have done for the mill rate this year, the actual impact totally on the budget would be a negative 0.09. So the school, it actually does affect how the school budget affects the mill rate.
Definitely.
And that's why we are asking for the assurances from this council that us appropriating this money back to the town, that it's actually a mill rate, affecting the mill rate. So that those of us, and I'm sure all of us, that pay taxes in the town of Fairfield, we're actually gonna see that that's actually affecting, and that when we get our tax bills based on this, it actually affects, it shows that it's the school budget that actually went down this year, and that's what we are asking you to do. And that's for me and my other board members to go back to the board when we meet here, I'm expecting it to be in a couple weeks, to recommend to the full board that we do this. That's what we're asking. Do you have any questions? I know I threw a lot of numbers and stuff out there. I'm more than happy to answer and to let you know. And we're still working on what we're gonna be doing with the rest of the money. It may be used next year to offset the budget, again, to help the taxpayers in Fairfield, but we haven't made those decisions because we want to wait to see what has, and again, we haven't made any decision because it has to go to the full board. It just went to the finance committee.
Actually, I have a statement and then a question. First of all, for your assurances that it would offset, be recognized within the tax commitment, it would be, because the way a tax commitment works is that the allocation number that we get from the school is exactly the number that gets used in the tax commitment. So it's not like we cannot take the number you already gave us and then use that money again later when the number changes. We cannot do a tax commitment until you give us what the new adjusted number is. So whatever you decide to offset with will ultimately affect property taxes, because that's the number we have to use. It has its own specific line in any given tax commitment. We can't commit property taxes. None of the municipalities in SAD 49 can commit property taxes until you tell us what our new number is. So it will affect whatever it is that you do.
Well, like I said, that's the one thing I know that a lot of taxpayers, myself included, are concerned about, the fact that our taxes are going up, and this is actually showing that, the school budget actually went down this year, based on this. Not, the budget didn't go down, but the impact to the towns went down. And that's basically what we were hoping for, is for, that's what we want to, as a finance committee, that was the strong discussion around this, there were some of us, and I will admit to being one of them, that was skeptical about putting it back, and not using it, to offset something within the district. But I think again, I was one that, with a lot of discussion, was persuaded that this was a good idea, that it's what the governor and what the legislature wanted when they allocated the additional funds. And I get that, and I think it's a good thing that this is what we're doing. We just had a lot of discussions around it because we wanted to make sure we were doing the right thing. And that's why we were, wanted to come before you and, explain this, what our thinking is, so that we can go back to the full board. And I'm expecting our full board meeting is gonna be in a couple of weeks. We have a couple of other issues that we have to deal with, and I'm expecting that to happen in the next couple of weeks when we call for a board meeting to cover those issues. So that's our expectations. So I'm not sure how your tax bills are gonna work. I know you
They're
need
not
that
going to.
information.
So what's gonna happen is that we're gonna start having everybody that calls us looking for tax bills to call you. So.
Like I said, I'm
Seriously.
expecting it to be in 2 weeks. I'm based on my conversation with the superintendent and a couple of other issues that have to come before the board this summer. We want to try to just keep and make it all at once. So my expectations is in 2 weeks. That's my expectations. Dr. Baker and I kind of were looking at our schedules and making that happen, and I believe we're looking at 2 weeks on that.
Because it's
So
gonna be, because you've got Albion and Clinton and Benton that are all gonna be in the same.
we're
organization.
we're all in, that's why our expectations is in 2 weeks. We've been having some of these same conversations. We as a finance committee wanted each town to have their representatives speak to their town, whether selectmen, council, or whatever. We wanted the representatives from those towns to actually speak to them, because we felt that that was a fair thing, so that everybody gets a chance to hear why we're doing what we're doing and how it was laid out.
Well, and the main reason that the vote was positive on that and that budget actually went through was the simple reason in there, particularly with the increase, was that 50% of that increase would go towards property tax relief at each town.
Right.
Is there a possibility that the finance department can get the municipalities a preliminary number of what they think it's going to be?
I actually have a preliminary that I can give you, Michelle.
Sure.
Is it $165,900?
Well, what we did is we rounded up. We didn't make it like exactly half. We actually rounded up with what we're giving back to the town. And I can give you, I printed this off before I came down tonight. This is, I do have 3 pages here. This is the actual numbers that that Sue put together,
Okay.
the business manager.
Yep.
So it shows our budgeted numbers, and it shows what the Fairfield's, everything,
Amount would be.
yeah, what the mill impact is and the breakdowns. So
Right.
we usually get one of these about budget times, and this is the one that she put together for us.
Yep, thank you.
Am I forgetting anything? My other board members? Am I forgetting anything?
Michelle, you said you had a question?
You had a question too, right?
She answered it when I asked when
Oh,
they were going to
okay.
come in.
Oh, okay.
She's got a question.
Our next meeting is August 9th. I'm wondering if we'll have that information finalized for that meeting?
I do not believe so, because, hold on, let me get my calendar out. If I don't look, I'll tell you wrong. There was a reasoning behind it. We have 2
Excuse
very
me.
important positions that are coming up within the district that that we're dealing with. So until those positions are ready for the board, I can't make any. I believe our timeline is that week, but not necessarily by the 9th. It may be that Thursday that we meet, the 10th. Dr. Baker and I we set on that week, we just haven't set a date yet.
The next council meeting after that, as far as tax commitment, is going to be the 4th Wednesday of August. So we
Okay.
meet the 2nd and the 4th, just
Okay.
to make
Yeah.
you aware of their schedule.
Right, our commitment, my conversation with Dr. Baker, yesterday was that we intend to meet the week of the 7th. We just haven't set a specific date yet. We try to make it on a Thursday, just because that's what everybody's normal is, but I will ask if Dr. Baker has a problem with us meeting Monday or Tuesday. If he doesn't, if his schedule fits and we can do that, then I will try to do that. I just don't want to make any promises.
Thank you.
Very good.
I can actually give you a couple more. I just wanted to make sure if anybody would like, I know I was short a couple of copies of just because I needed one to read. So did somebody else
No,
need
you
a,
need it.
or, okay.
I don't.
Oh, okay.
I only have a partial.
No,
Okay.
no, there's only those two and you can have.
Two
Just two
sheets.
pages, okay. So you're all set there?
You need to.
Okay.
Good, thank you.
I'm all set, thank you.
You know, looking at the situation in that case, then I'll withdraw my motion and
And I'll withdraw my second
to
until
put
we
it off
find out.
until,
We only did a motion for discussion anyway.
Right,
So
but-
not
Yeah.
to approve it.
And I did, I'll just address that really quickly. I actually looked at Robert's Rules of Order on the issue of, first of all, moving things for discussion. They are still live motions. Somebody could call a question and
right,
get
that's
it
that's
passed.
why I withdrew it.
The other thing, actually, and I don't think it's a big deal, we can use our own rules if we want, but under Robert's Rules of Order, you actually have to have a vote to table a motion. You can't withdraw a motion once it's presented in
Okay.
a second.
Yeah, I was
I
just going
move-
to suggest that.
I move we table the motion.
I'll second.
Okay.
We have a motion and a second to table. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Motion passes. Item is tabled.
Okay.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Terry.
I don't appreciate the sarcasm from the town manager.
Why am I being sarcastic?
No. Look at the film. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Joe.
Okay, our eighth order of business, council workshop and other business. Discuss Economic and Community Development Committee.
So this was just to get your input as the committee is looking at what their future mission is going to be, and to get the input from the council as to what council would like to see from this group.
From what I understand, they seem to be going in a couple of different directions, whether it be,
The committee's been a lot more focused on things that have been more like parks and recreation, quality of place projects, as opposed to economic development, TIF, business retention, facade programs, that sort of stuff, in the last couple of years. They've had a couple of folks who have resigned because the committee wasn't focused on more business development as opposed to more recreational development. We've had some that have felt as though they were kind of spinning their wheels a little bit. But I think a lot of that too, the committee has discussed that they had a lot of projects in the air and no real focus on any one in particular. So what they've decided to do at their last meeting was really take a good look at what their focus should be for the future. There were a couple of conversations about comments about whether or not they should be just an ad hoc committee and meet when they're needed, if it was to come with things like TIF development and credit enhancement agreements. Do they have separate subcommittees that actually focus on parks and trails, and that group meets, and the other groups do more, business facade types things, and then they have one big meeting later. They really are, they're looking at everything right down to the day they meet and the time they meet. Is what's working, what's not working. They've had an awful lot of meetings in the last couple of months that have been canceled due to folks' schedules. People have not been able to make it, various different things. So folks want to participate, but they also don't want to participate just for the sake of participating. They want to make sure that they actually have a purpose. So when we were at that meeting last month, they had asked to get some input from the council, and knowing that this meeting was before their meeting in August, that this would be a good opportunity to do that. So what we provided to you is what we have in our administrative policies of what the definition currently is for the Economic Community Development Advisory Committee. We gave you a copy of typically what is in the town report explaining about what it is that they do. And just, whether anybody had any other different ideas or whether what's currently in place for a definition is fine and the group needs to get back to what the actual definition is.
My thought on it is that it seems like at this point, I mean, this committee was established for a purpose that it seems like we already have a lot of sort of people doing that. We have the Growth Council, we have KV Cog, we've got all these, the chamber, all these groups that we're part of that are focused on, business development and tips and credit enhancement agreements and all of that. Plus, most of those things have to come to us for any sort of action, and it's just not feasible to make a business deal that first goes to an advisory committee after KV Cog or, the Growth Council has already kind of brokered, the initial conversation, and then it has to come to us in an executive session to discuss, how the specifics of the deal before we can even do anything. So it doesn't really make a lot of sense to me to have yet another committee tasked with that work. What does make sense to me is having a committee that does focus on quality of life in non-business ways, because that is a way to drive business into the community without necessarily having to have a master's degree in economics to understand it or undertake it. I think that as far as an advisory citizen committee of, and I'm sure I know that there are people on this committee who are experts in that field, but not everybody is, and not everybody who wants to be on that committee wants to be an expert in economic development, but they know what their community wants and needs, and it would be great to hear those voices and still have a committee that meets for that purpose. I think for people who are very interested in the nuts and bolts of the business aspects of the community, it seems to me there are other ways of getting involved in that. But where the committee seems to be strong is on issues of quality of life. I've really appreciated their efforts and input on those issues, and I would like to see that work become their primary focus.
I think from being on the committee, though, that one of the challenges that I've seen is there's not a lot, when it comes to the economic side of the committee, there's not a whole lot of forward momentum when an idea comes up. There's all kinds of momentum that gets placed when we meet and we talk about a trail, or we talk about, potential bridge to Mill Island, or whatever the case may be. There's all kinds of momentum for that, but we talk about facade improvement, but then it just kind of fizzles, so I think that giving those matters a little more sense of urgency would actually help the committee fulfill its actual already current goal.
So I guess my question on that, and I will admit I've had very little direct interaction with the Economic and Community Development Committee. I mostly rely on your reports and prior to you, Councillor Thibodeau's reports. Mm-hmm. But is that lack of urgency a lack of urgency in the committee to deal with those issues, or is it a perceived lack of urgency from the town government toward the committee on those issues?
I can't answer that, because I don't know the answer. It would be unfair for me to misspeak, right?
Certainly.
So I'm going to say that it's easier to get, to gain excitement around something that doesn't take a whole lot of energy.
Right.
Than around figuring out how to move in a direction to make facade improvement a real thing. How to retain business in the town of Fairfield. So both of those things are important pieces that current sitting members are willing to do.
Okay. Because I would say, from my perspective, one of the one of the reasons I'm actually a little bit surprised that we're having the conversation at all is that most of what I've heard from being reported out of the Economic and Community Development Committee have been ideas about quality of life things, like you mentioned, the trail systems and Bridge to Mill Island Park and whatnot. And it seemed, from my perspective at any rate, that that was where the committee was investing its energy. And I think that there have been a lot of really good strides made by them investing their energy there. I think we've also recently seen a stronger investment of energy and resource from organizations that focus on, I guess it, for lack of a better word, in a professional capacity on economic development. And we've seen that bear fruit. And I would like to see a way of not having every committee do everything, but having committees that work really well at the things that they can do and get everything done, but with different committees.
And I think that you and I are talking about two separate things on the same scale, because I'm more talking about the existing businesses and how to enhance the businesses, whereas the work that KV-COG is doing and the work that some of the other agencies out there are doing to bring in new business is a separate item. So I don't know that necessarily the Economic and Community Development Committee needs to be focused on how do we attract new business. Maybe having somewhat of a voice of what are some of the metrics that we're not looking at. An idea, because oftentimes Garvin is here during those meetings. So
Right.
Throwing out an idea that maybe he's not heard of or thought of or whatever isn't a bad thing, but how do we, inside improving the community, how do we help the business owners that are here creating jobs and potentially, how do we make it easier to help them bring in more business and beautify the town that way?
Would the committee have more energy to act on those issues if we took, at least officially, some of the stuff that I have not, in my experience, heard a lot from the Economic and Community Development Committee about, like overseeing TIFs, for instance. I don't know that I've ever heard anybody from the Economic and Community Development Committee mention to me what they're doing to oversee the TIF districts. I think that's something that we, in my experience, have pretty well relied on the manager to inform us of what we're doing. Would there be more energy to devote to working out ways to support our existing businesses and improve the quality of life downtown by facade rejuvenation and keeping existing economic opportunity in Fairfield if we pared down the mission to things that are more focused?
I think that we're a little late doing that, but yes, I think that would be helpful. I think that a couple of our the people that have exited would have stayed engaged if we were focused in that direction. And I'm not even saying that it's not a bad idea to split the Economic Community Development Committee into subcommittees, because there's a wonderful push on the community side and there is interest on the economic side, but there's so much time in a day. We meet for an hour and a half a month. So potentially allowing the creation of a couple of subcommittees could help focus both ends and meet in the middle.
Do you think that it makes the most sense to have two separate subcommittees working under the same committee structure, or to just have two different committees?
I think it would streamline coming back here as projects would need to come back here.
Both under the same or two different?
If they were both under the same.
I'm going to go back a couple of years now. We had an economic development committee started quite a while ago. It was used to work under the office of our economic development director that we had here in town. Actually, in 1983, I was actually chairman of that committee. It was a three-person committee. And we really didn't do a lot other than the economic development. If we had somebody who was interested in the business, we would take them and red carpet them and things like that. And that's what the primary was. But moving along, we had a committee for quite a while. Then we took, of course, we had the the Economic Development Committee corporation that did the KVCC thing and separate entity and all that type of stuff, along with the Economic Development Director. Then we went through a period where we had a good group of people that we put together a strategic plan for the town. It was overseen at that time by KV Cog, by the chief of KV Cog, and we did that whole thing. And we did have committees set up. Unfortunately, when you start doing something like that, it's a volunteer situation. People are not tendency to volunteer this day and age, and those committees all fell apart, point blank. There was just nobody, they were all separate underneath this and that, and I was the chairman, but they all fell apart. People just stopped, didn't work it anymore. Our primary focus, I think, on this situation was to take and use our committee, and we use Garvin, who is actually the Growth Council, not KV Cog. KV Cog really does not participate in our committee. It's the Growth Council, the Growth Council that participates in our committee, and they're under the chamber, which we're all part of and stuff like that. And I think the committee was originally designed was to, when they started thinking about the bridges and all of that type of stuff, was to make it a more flowery community that would attract business. Say, gee, that really looks like a nice place to start a business type of situation. And that's what the whole concept and idea was at that point. Obviously, with the economics, the way it's going, and if you look at, of course it's changed now, but if you looked at Waterville and, the other towns and stuff like that, it hasn't been super successful.
No, it isn't.
We've got 16,000 or so cars that go through this town every day. You would think that there are some things that we should be able to do with it. And I think it's just a matter of getting down, looking at our, our counts, our members here too. I think one of the things that really needs to be done is we need to get more business people involved in the situation. Went through it back in the early 90s when I was in Waterville and had a couple of businesses, and Waterville went through that, well, we don't need anything, we're doing great and everything like that. And of course that, you saw what happened with that level all the way around. Now it's coming back again. What's gonna happen, shopping malls are starting to, it's not necessarily here, but nationwide, they're starting to deteriorate a little bit, and it's just a matter of time catching up. And it's just a matter of having a committee that really works hard to do what we can do and try to develop and bring some businesses in and stuff like that. The chamber does have a problem. Now the chamber has a program of retention, attraction and retention of businesses program, and there's groups of people that go out and interview business people and try to find out what their needs are and things like that. Try to maintain the businesses we currently have downtown and bring in a few more, because the more businesses that come in, obviously the more you get.
And unfortunately, I think the dancing elephant is going to be leaving us.
I see that was for sale.
Yeah, it is.
Doesn't surprise me. I hate to say that, but you got to market a little bit, and you can't just open your doors and expect people to flow through the doors.
So that's going to be something that's going to be moving out on Main Street, so that's going to be an empty.
Right, well, it was empty a year ago, so.
And again.
And again, businesses, restaurants are businesses, but when you've got a restaurant every other door, sometimes it's a little bit much.
I know, it's too bad though.
I mean, I would say, I think we absolutely should have, a forum for our business community, the business community of Fairfield, to be able to communicate on these issues. And one of my concerns with the regionalization of economic development has always been, you basically have entities that are competing, being told to work together on these things. So I'm glad that we do have a forum for the expression of those ideas. I think we do need to focus on making it more effective. But one thing I think I would like to see is, development of quality of life for the purpose of attracting business is great. But quality of life is a good in and of itself. And having a group of people who want to focus on quality of life issues, who aren't necessarily doing it for the sole purpose of attracting business investment, would not be a bad idea either.
It's an advisory committee. I mean, I'm looking at them as like a think tank.
That's basically,
What ideas have, they brought many, and maintain bringing us ideas and, for us to find out, what's feasible, what can we do, and maintain that flow of, new ideas and thinking outside of the box and bringing stuff to the council of, well, here's an idea that we have. Can this be, is this something that you guys can do? It may be something we can do, it may not, it may be something we can't do.
Yeah.
But to have a flow of ideas is, that it's paramount to the success of the town of Fairfield.
it's a tough situation, because it comes into the aspect of all business. It's crawl, walk, and run. And we've got, through the Growth Council, for example, we've got a business that's going up. It's not gonna be a tax-based business, but it's gonna be a job-based business. And the whole thing about businesses is about the jobs that it's going to bring, because the more jobs it brings into the community, the more the community gets off of the people, and the more, if people decide to go downtown and do that. And there's a couple of other things that are in the makings that possibly will help us,
Is that the dialysis clinic that you're
come up,
talking about?
yes. And there's a couple more things that are, not for publication yet, but they're coming. And we do have, we've got a good downtown. Like I said, we've got a lot of cars that go down through there, and that's gonna come around. It's
Right.
just, again, it's a crawl, walk, run, because the town has, like every other town, most small towns in this country, it's been a tough road for the last 20 years.
I'd like to see the committee continue. Whether they break into two different groups, that's a decision that they would have to make amongst themselves.
Yeah.
If they think it's beneficial, but, come up with these ideas.
Right.
Think outside the box, bring them to us, let us know.
Well, we had also talked about trying to recruit a few more business people.
Yeah,
into
bring a
that
few more
too,
people on
to-
board.
Because that's very
And their conversation
important.
actually has run very similar to what yours has here this evening.
Yeah.
And I think one of the big reasons is, like we were mentioning before, the facade program, the more economic development, business type pieces. Well, a lot of that was because of the fact that, the town used almost all of its TIF money it did use all of its downtown TIF money when we
Yes,
tore
we did.
down all of those those buildings and
Yep.
cleared those lots and put in that space. So that put those smaller programs for businesses on hold until you had such time as those funds came back. Those funds are back on the rise again. There's new programs that we're looking at, and those pieces are gonna come back into play again.
Right.
Within the next year.
And just
So,
going back a ways, we used the TIF situation to get the addition on the Hudamaki, which was that building that's on the Fairfield side, and got that, moved in the right place and things like that. And actually, with that chamber program, we were able to move a pine tree zone over so Hudamaki, so they would pick up and do another, they did another machine on the Waterville end, and we're able to do that and create a bunch of jobs over on that one, and bought that one in through the pine tree zone and stuff like that. So all those programs work, and they are all counter-angled, and again, it's about the job aspect of it as much as it is the taxes.
Councilor Neubauer, I have a request of you as a member of the Economic and Community Development Committee. Could you find out whether the perception of inertia among the committee members is a perception that the committee itself is having a hard time producing the work that it's trying to produce, or whether they feel there's something on our end that we could be doing differently to facilitate their work? Because if there is a perception that the town council either now or historically has been inert on these issues, I would like to know about it so that we can correct it.
Right, and the person bringing into that too would be the chairman, who is Bruce Harrington.
Bruce Harrington, yep, that's exactly where I'm gonna go with it.
Yep.
Yep.
That'd be
So,
good.
I will, sorry, I was scribbling down, because I'm trying to word it into one question.
Certainly.
Is that possible?
No, it actually isn't, apparently, not in my mind.
Any more on this particular issue? Until we hear more? Okay, we're good. Number 2, discuss a local food resolution.
I resolved to eat.
Eating is good.
Yeah.
All
This
right.
meeting was brought up at your last meeting, this topic, and we did provide you a copy of the resolution that the council signed back in November of 2016, as well as with what the new law is. At the time, we were thinking about doing a food sovereignty ordinance, which actually wasn't legal at the time.
Right.
We had postponed that, but did the resolution instead, and now we have the new law that says that local authority to regulate food systems is subject now to home rule, so. This is here for you. And not just not knowing how you want us to proceed.
So I brought this up as other business last time because we had so recently passed this resolution, and I think we were not necessarily at the time we passed it expecting that we were suddenly going to have the authority to do the thing that we had resolved that we would do if we had the authority to do it. What strikes me is that this new law seemed to have support from people I would consider to be in the most left and most right parts of our government. It does not strike me as being a issue that is strictly political so much as a matter of just not restricting the personal choices of our residents and giving people an opportunity to engage in their local community. And I think dovetailing into the conversation we were just having, this is an area where we can really build a sense of community and say that we are a place that grows its food and provides its food to each other, and now we can do it in accordance with the law. I recognize that there are still federal regulations and laws on the issue of food packaging and distribution and whatnot. That said, it's a well-established principle that we are not required to enforce federal law on this or any other issue. If the federal government has a problem, they can deal with it themselves. The state has cleared the way for us to do this without violating any state laws, which is where our authority to regulate comes from. And I think that we should go ahead and let people know that we are not going to stand in the way of them being able to engage in this very local commerce with their neighbors or tell them where they should get their food. So I guess what I would suggest at this point is, I know before we had looked at some actual food sovereignty ordinances that municipalities had made or proposed before they were allowed. I think it would be great if we could see what changes we would need to make to one of those to comply with the law as written. I think there are definitely going to have to be clear provisions about having to produce the food in Fairfield and sell it in Fairfield to consumers, not to wholesalers or retailers. But beyond that, I think that we could port another community's ordinance into our code of ordinances and make it so that people in this town can have the freedom to decide what tomatoes they want to buy.
Right. Well, again, and the other general idea, I think of that, which goes into the Economic Development Committee, was the reason of working down below where we had purchased those houses and talking about a bridge and everything else was to put up a really good, big, proper farmer's market.
And this would allow access to the market, so to speak, for people who currently would not be able to get into that, no matter their skill at gardening, no matter the scale of the use of their property. This is a way that we can clear the way for people to make the best and most beneficial use of their property. and there's no longer a legal impediment to us making that available to them.
Right.
So what's preventing them from doing it right now?
We haven't passed an ordinance saying that they can.
If we passed an ordinance saying they can't.
I would argue that parts of our land use ordinance would suggest they can't. That said, where we have been silent, I believe that the state law and regulations would apply with full effect. I think we actually are required to affirmatively establish that we are exempting our local growers from state regulation in order to do that. Because otherwise, a state regulator is going to have no way of knowing whether or not they should come to Fairfield and
Yeah, because they've done
regulate
that
these
with milk.
products.
They've done it with milk.
Right.
and,
Okay, no, I'm just asking the question, for
Certainly.
clarification.
My kids grew up on non-homogenized milk.
Raw milk, it was a
Raw
staple of the diet.
I remember when the trucks used to come to town, and people used to line up for that. That was quite a program.
Well, I
Unfortunate.
remember when they used to drop it at your doorstep.
Well, that
with the
too.
milk.
Oh, that was city people, right,
But
okay,
I'm talking
yeah.
about
There
the
was a
government
milkman.
trucks that used to
Yes.
come into town for cheese and all that.
So my reading of this law, just to clarify where we were at before, is that actually, the way I read it, is that if we make an ordinance that allows us to be slightly less stringent than the state or federal government, the state will recognize it. You know,
Yes.
so the way typically it works is that if it's the law, we have the right to make it more stringent under home rule authority. Well, this is an odd law where we actually have the right to make it less stringent, and it doesn't happen very often.
That is correct.
That's the reason for this.
Yep.
So our ordinance, if folks right now have to comply with state and federal law, unless we create an ordinance that says they could be slightly less than what those regulations are. That's the way this would work.
Okay.
So we can collect some various different ordinances out there. I can also put out to folks to see, I mean, where it's June 16th, there might not be any municipalities out there yet that have done anything with this under the new guise, but we can definitely see what's out there and what's rolling around, so we can get that for you.
I think there may be some organizations that have
Yeah.
Think so.
anticipated this with proposed ordinances.
Yeah, talked to a couple of farmers. Like that.
And I know that the one that we were originally looking at was actually a really good ordinance, it just, we didn't have the ability to do it.
Right.
So that, we may have already everything that we need, so.
Okay, okay. All right, number 3, discuss public safety ordinance, parking.
I'm looking at that thing, it looks like page 5, section B, number 4 is what we're looking at to make a change on.
So, we had the police chief, met with some of the folks up at Kudamaki a while back. And we had some parking issues, on regular town streets. Kudamaki themselves had some parking issues in some various locations. And we would actually, in order for us to be able to, follow parking bans in various locations, they have to be approved by the town council. And this piece, the westerly side of Main Street from the entrance of Kudamaki parking lot to the Waterville town line shall be limited to 30 consecutive minutes of parking. What's happening at this point is staff at the mill are parking there, causing delivery trucks to double park. There's a huge pileup of folks going in and out of the building, and Kudamaki themselves would like to eliminate this in there. So that folks are limited as to how long they can park in front of the mill and their business offices and stay in one spot. And this would satisfy that as well, and by including it in this, it would allow the police department to help them enforce that in that area.
This is what we basically talked about before.
Yeah.
Had discussions on.
We-
Okay, yeah.
Yes. So I'll make a motion that we change our public safety ordinance to include that, which simply says the westerly side of Main Street from the entrance to the Hootamaki parking lot to the Waterville Town Line shall be limited to 30 consecutive minutes of parking.
Now second it.
So you need to have because this is an ordinance, we'll have to have a public hearing at the next meeting.
Oh, okay.
And then you can make that motion then.
Okay,
Okay.
you got it. Got you covered. I'm gonna make a motion to withdraw my.
Can't do that. You've already tried that.
Motion out of order.
You've already tried it and it doesn't work, so never mind.
It's a friendly withdrawal.
Okay, well, as long as it's friendly, we'll consider it.
Okay. Number 4, discuss other council business. Beverly?
Yeah. Have you heard any more from the Department of Transportation concerning Route 139?
Not a word. However, I can tell you that we have collected 300 and something pages of speed data from up there since after that meeting.
Mhm.
And believe it or not, the average rate of speed is 41 miles per hour. Now, that being said, we've had somebody who topped out at 99 miles per hour.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my God.
And then, so it'll give us the maximum and the least.
Uh-huh.
But the average rate of speed, I don't have the exact counts of how many folks it was 41
Mm-hmm.
miles per hour. So it's not that bad
Where was
considering
it,
it's a
where was that
35.
set up, though?
That was set up in the middle of the hill, right next to Stanley's.
Oh, okay, because I was gonna say, because if you were clocking people coming out of those roads, obviously it would slow everything way down.
Right,
No,
but
it's
basically-
just coming down.
It was
Oh, just
only
right
just
down
coming
over the
down the hill, and we did not have the display on, because the minute you see those
The
displays pop
displays,
up,
everybody
you'll slow
slows
down.
down, yeah.
So to get real true readings, we kept it blank the entire time.
Okay.
So, the chief was compiling a report, he just collected all of the data yesterday,
Mhm.
and has taken a look
That's
at it.
interesting.
So it was a lot slower than I thought it was going to be, because I was thinking it might be more than that, but it's really not that high. But,
Is
and the volume is huge.
Because what is it, 35 through there, I think, isn't it?
Yes,
It's
it
very
is,
good.
yeah.
Yes.
And Western Avenue?
So nothing on Western Avenue at this point in time. So all of our crews right now for Public Works are currently working on the Ridge Road for that construction project.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So they haven't looked into anything else for any other construction projects. Everything basically sits, unless it's an extreme emergency, we'll sit and wait until that project is over and then it'll fall. in
Well, he
line.
knows, because I told him I wasn't going away anyway,
Nope,
so.
and that's fine.
But I'm gonna keep asking.
That's fine.
Okay, I'm done.
Jeffrey?
Nothing this evening.
No, there.
I'm good.
Nope, I'm good.
You're good.
I'm good. All right. The next regular meeting of the Fairfield Town Council will be on Wednesday, August 9th, 2017.
Christine, don't run off.
At this time, the council will recess and sign all documents that require signatures of council members.
So moved.
Second.
Recess.